Disney's latest animated film, Wish, has flopped at the box office. It's official. $33 million domestically is spectacularly bad, unimaginably bad. And what's interesting is that many thought that this film would be different than the previous failures from Disney Studios. It's not woke, it's not political, it's an original story, it's not a sequel. A new story with a new animation style, new music. It was just what everybody had been asking for. And that's what's got people asking. People are asking why. What happened here? I get why some of those other films have failed, but what happened here? Why? How is this possible? What is happening to Disney films? I think I know, and it's not an answer that I really hear people talking about much, and it's scarier than any of the other collective reasons that other films are failing. It's not because Disney is too woke, and it's not because Disney Plus, not because of streaming. I mean, those are contributing factors, yes. And for you personally as an individual, that might be the reason why you've stopped watching Disney films. But those two factors alone don't get you all the way to an epic disaster like a $33 million domestic opening, especially for a film that was supposed to be the culmination, the grand finale to Disney's 100th anniversary. This movie was supposed to be a big deal, and it was not. I believe the reason why this turned out to be the biggest flop since Strange World, perhaps even a bigger one, because nobody really expected Strange World to do anything. People were expecting this film to do a lot. The reason why is because Disney has lost the trust of its audience in general. And it's something that's been happening. It has happened gradually over a period of time. I would say it began probably with the Star Wars sequel trilogies, with, for some, Last Jedi, for others, Rise of Skywalker. Now, where do you fall on that debate, which is still, to this day, a hotly contested debate, Last Jedi versus Rise of Skywalker kind of thing. Most people generally accept Force Awakens is okay. But where do you fall in that debate? It's actually kind of irrelevant. What is relevant is that fans of Star Wars, and by extension, fans of Disney films, have started to lose their chill a little bit. Let's take a look at the box office for those Star Wars films, the sequel trilogy. $2 billion for Force Awakens to just $1.3 billion for Last Jedi. That's kind of shocking right there. That's a huge drop-off. It gets worse. Just $1 billion for Rise of the Resistance. Now, billions, yes, there's still a lot of money, but I have to wonder if Rise was even a financial success. I can imagine a scenario where it cost them $1 billion to make Rise. I can imagine that. Now, one of the most resonant complaints that I had heard about, let's say, Rise of Skywalker, for example, and this is something, it goes towards the overall feeling, is that Disney had completely lost the script. And I mean literally in this case. Everything set up in The Last Jedi was forgotten or scrapped, and they completely wrote an seemingly unrelated story for Rise of Skywalker. I'm ranting a little bit. That's what happens when we start talking about Star Wars. And they did it because they heard complaints about Last Jedi, and they started to pander. This is the major point. They started to pander to their audience a little bit instead of just making art. They had started a story, whether it was a good one or not, they had started a story in Force Awakens and continued it in Last Jedi with Rey and Finn and Poe. They started it, but then somehow
Palpatine returned.
Anyway, again, I don't want to get down that tangent. Let's talk about Marvel. Marvel next. Marvel peaked in 2019, obviously Endgame. But where do you go from Endgame? It was quite a finale. Where do you go from there? We're finding out with Quantumania and the Marvels, which actually, let's bring this conversation to the present, to 2023. We'll take it back to the beginning. I just mentioned Ant-Man and Quantumania. That was in February, I think. Then you have the live-action Little Mermaid, Elemental, Indiana Jones Dial of Destiny, Haunted Mansion, The Marvels, and Wish. Not a single one of those could be described as a hit. I mean, Ant-Man, possibly. I think they had, box office, something in the high 400 millions on a budget of around 200 million, which seems to be the going rate these days. So, I mean, possibly that was a break even or minor win. But the rest could all be described as troubled. And, I mean, you could describe Quantumania as troubled too, while we're at it. Whether or not it was a financial win, it was troubled. Viewers had beef with every single one of those movies. Only Elemental managed to show some legs in theaters, and that was due primarily to the fact that it was a pretty good movie, and it had strong word of mouth. People were talking about it a lot, and plus it did very well overseas. Now, you will probably have observed that in that list of films that I just mentioned, that I didn't mention Guardians of the Galaxy 3. And that was intentional. I consider that an outlier. If you were grading all of these films on a scale, that one is so far removed from everything else that you would drop it off. It wouldn't be included on that scale. But I do believe that there's one major reason why that film succeeded where the others did not, and that's because it was decidedly not a Disney film. It was absolutely a James Gunn film. There was not a single whiff of Disney, influence in that film. It was absolutely a James Gunn film. And fans of Marvel, fans of James Gunn, trusted him to make a good James Gunn Marvel film. And that's what happened. They trusted him, and he did it, so it got really good word of mouth. It got really good, buzz, and the reviews were great, so the film just continued to sell and sell and sell. And that's a key word here, something we talked about before, trust. Going back to that list of films in 2023, we got the live-action remake of Little Mermaid. It suffered from significant cultural backlash due to the casting. For right or wrong, that's a different conversation, but it did happen. Then you got Indiana Jones, The Dial of Destiny, an absolute bomb financially, and there you've got trust issues. Disney thought they had $1 billion movie, because why not? Every other Indiana Jones movie has done wonderfully. They thought they had $1 billion movie, but apparently they forgot that we have Kingdom of the Crystal Skull was the last Indiana Jones movie. It was a terrible movie, and fans of that franchise had serious doubts about whether or not Disney could do better. They could do better than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. But the problem there is that even if people were willing and ready to give Indiana Jones a second chance, the problem was that the movie wasn't good. It just wasn't a very good movie. It was okay, but it wasn't anything that said, hey, man, they did it. We're back. Indy's back. This is at least on the level of Temple of Doom. Haunted Mansion. Trust issues. The first Haunted Mansion film is, famously bad. We love to talk about that. It's almost gotten to the point now where it's looking good now in comparison, that Eddie Murphy film. And then you got the last live-action film based on a Disney park attraction, Jungle Cruise. Not a good movie. I haven't even finished that one still. Heck, the last Pirates of the Caribbean film was bad. Pirates 5, not a good movie. Neither was Pirates 4, if you're talking about it. We're talking about trust issues, which brings me to, there's a concept called the trust thermocline. It borrows its idea from the scientific phenomenon, where we see large bodies of water, and they're made of layers of differing temperatures. This is going to get scientific here for just a second. At the very top, the thinnest layer, there are waves and gradually decreasing temperatures as you go lower. Gradual. But then suddenly, after about 1,000 meters, it gets super cold, near freezing. In economics, the trust thermocline, as explained by John Bull in this fascinating thread, it's the genesis of the entire conversation we're having right now. I found this on Twitter, and in it, he suggests that if you gradually provide less quality for more money, you are gradually eroding your customers' trust in you as a provider. At some point, the audience loses faith and they just give up completely. It's over. And it won't be because of any one thing specifically. Say, for example, the belief that a lot of this is due to Disney's, identity politics or their woke agenda, quote unquote. I'm not saying that is the case. I'm just saying that is the accusation being made against Disney. Again, these are factors, but they are not the factor, the reason, which brings us back to Wish. None of what we just talked about is good news for Disney films. Let's recap real quick on the films that came out this year. Elemental struggled its first weekend, making just $29 million domestically. Dial of Destiny struggled its opening weekend, making just $60 million domestically. Haunted Mansion struggled its opening weekend, making just $24 million domestically. Marvel struggled, making just $46 million domestically. And after this Thanksgiving weekend, Wish made just $31 million domestically. And that's over not just a 3-day weekend, like all those other films, a 5-day weekend. They started counting box up, or I should say, Wish opened on a Tuesday. So that $31 million is from Tuesday to Sunday, not Friday to Sunday, but Tuesday to Sunday. If you were to take, let's say, the very best 3 days of that 5-day stretch, just $23 million domestically. That's worse than Haunted Mansion. Why? What is the reason? We talked about the trust issues. We talked about the trust thermocline. And the only way to overcome that is to make a good film, but I don't think they did. Wish wasn't, well, it's not a great film. Here's a review. I think this pretty much sums up the negativity that is coming out of Wish and what a lot of people are seeing instead of whatever it is that Disney intended us to see. This fairy tale feels more like a corporate product than a magical event. It's a limp dissertation on Disney's motto that when you wish upon a star, your dreams come true. In other words, they're not making art. Meanwhile, I'm not sure what happened here. I mean, when you talk about factors, there's practically no marketing for this film. The Wish had I wasn't even aware, you guys, fully aware that the film was even in theaters like the week before. I didn't even know that it was coming up. I also had no idea what this film was really about. They don't really tell you. It's kind of vague. There's just nothing is happening in the trailers or that suggests really what this movie's about. And there is something to this. Contrast that, while we're here, with the recent success of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which had two of the best marketing campaigns that you could ever imagine for a film. And there was no doubt about what either of those two films was about. And both films delivered. They marketed it a lot. They told you what the movie was about. They made it look like it was going to be great. And then they were great. Boom, you've got financial success. That's the formula. It was a masterclass. Those two films are a masterclass on how to release a film. Getting back to reasons, there is Disney Plus. That is a possible reason. For sure, there are viewers, there is an audience out there or a segment of the audience that is just not going to go to Wish because they're going to wait for it to show up on Disney Plus. Disney may be feeding on itself, maybe cannibalizing their own success. They're winning on Disney Plus, but they're losing in the theaters at its expense. But if the movie is good, it should overcome that. See Elemental or Guardians of the Galaxy. Those are both films that performed pretty well at the box office, even though everybody knew they were going to show up on Disney Plus. Meanwhile, every studio is putting stuff on streaming services now. Barbie and Oppenheimer are going to streaming. Actually, no, those still aren't available. Those still aren't available. You can pay-per-view, but they're not available for free streaming on, let's say, on Max. But anyway, I digress. The ultimate reason, again, getting back to this, the ultimate reason for this, I believe, is trust. Disney has lost the trust of its audience. The trust thermocline is happening. So I guess the question is, where is Disney on this trust thermocline right now? Is Wish the beginning of that drop into the freezing temperatures? Or is this Wish 20 million in 3 days? Have they already entered those freezing waters? I think we are already there. I think they've already achieved that. I think that Marvel's too. Marvel's is suffering from the same fate. It's not going to happen. It's not a thing that they should better watch out or it's going to happen. It's not. It's already too late. We're there. It's happening now. And that's the scariest part of all of this, is that if you follow that theory, the trust thermocline theory, further, there's little chance of recovery. I mean, it may not necessarily be, a death sentence, but it's very difficult to recover from that. And it could take, a decade or more for that to happen, which actually brings me to something that I said to a friend of mine when we were talking about this. He suggested that Jennifer Lee, the director of Wish, might get scapegoated for this, in spite of the fact that they've already agreed with her to make 2 more Frozen films. She was the one, she's Frozen also. But I don't believe that the issue with Disney films can be reduced to a single person. Certainly Jennifer Lee had nothing to do with Indiana Jones or Haunted Mansion or any of the other failures. Certainly she had nothing to do with those. Not for any single person or for any specific single reason. Likewise, there is no single solution to the problem. I feel like Disney, I mean, this sounds crazy because it's just impossible to think about, but I do think that they would benefit from just not making movies for a while. I mean, literally stop making movies. Just let everybody clear their palate. They're kind of doing that now with Star Wars. They're kind of doing that now because they haven't even, there's talked about things in production, but the only thing that they're making for Star Wars right now is stuff on Disney Plus, which is also not going particularly well these days. But honestly, what else, what's got people interested? Is there anything that's got you excited in the upcoming slate for Disney films. Inside Out 2, The Lion King prequel, Elio, the live-action remake of Moana. Oh my God. I'm Deadpool 3. That one, actually, I could feel like people getting excited about Deadpool 3. There's something there. So I wish them luck. I really do, because I want Disney films to be good. And I feel like I like Disney films. I like all of the studios. I like Disney films, Pixar, Lucasfilm, Marvel. I like it all. I want it all to do well. But they've got to, if they're going to keep making movies, they got to start making better movies. They have to find some way to regain that trust, and hopefully they still can. Hopefully there's still time, which is interesting, because no sooner had I finished writing this script, and as I'm recording this now, Bob Iger has spoken. He has responded and talked about this very issue. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to talk about Bob Iger's comments in a future video, because they stand alone and they require some discussion. We're going to talk about Bob Iger. We might even talk about this guy and his comments, which I can't repeat in this video, and I don't even know if I can repeat them in any kind of video, but it's a fascinating development, what's going on here. It's certainly good tabloid journalism, at least, although I don't know if I qualify as tabloid these days. But keep watching Fresh Baked and stay tuned for more, because I've got a lot to talk about when it comes to the Disney company. And in the meantime, follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at Fresh Baked Disney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at Fresh Baked Disney. If you like our show and want to show your support, please do consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/freshbaked. Otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. We love you. Be safe out there. Be kind to one another. And Fresh Baked.